Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 18th of January. And boy oh boy, it's still hotting up there in France, even though we're in the depths of winter. And we're looking at Act 10 coming up this weekend. Macron has come out and basically given the protesters another slap in the face by insulting them directly. And now even scholars are comparing this uprising to the French Revolution, and even the booklet of demands which people are writing is also echoing the French Revolution. So here we go, back to 1786. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, once again, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Great welcome back to all my subscribers, and welcome to any new subscribers that have joined me this evening. It is great to have you part of the conversation. And so we're going to be talking about this and going into a few more details in these articles, and then I'm going to come back and do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. From the local, Act 10, what to expect from Gilets Jaunes in France this Saturday. In France, the Yellow Vests are gearing up for a tense day of protests this weekend, despite the launch Tuesday of the government's national debate aimed to find an answer to their grievances. Here's what to expect. 2 months after France's Yellow Vest protests began, and despite some signs that the unprecedented grassroots movement is abating, the Gilets Jaunes have called for a 10th day of nationwide protests this Saturday. Calls to mobilise for Act 10 have flourished on social media, with different groups calling on supporters to gather in Paris and other cities around the country. The government had been hoping that its national debate launched earlier this week would soothe or put an end to the popular discontent. On Tuesday it launched a 3-month nationwide initiative intended to address the protesters' long list of grievances. Act 10 is Operation Outnumbered. Come with at least 2 friends who have never been before. Try and be persuasive. Tell them that everything will be okay, that they have to come and see it for themselves. If each and every one of us does that, next Saturday will be a turning point, wrote a Yellow Vest on a Facebook page, calling for people to come and march on the Champs-Élysées. By Thursday, over 30,000 said they were interested. Paris is back for Act 10 of the protest. Debating won't solve anything. Everybody knows what the people are asking for. Less elected officials, less privileges, more transparency, and for the people to be systematically consulted in case of disagreement. A democracy, a real democracy, commented a user on another Yellow Vest Facebook page. This is from the Fair Observer, making sense of the world. Emmanuel Macron has messed up. When Emmanuel Macron attempts to speak in the language of the people, it just makes things worse, the Daily Devil's Dictionary explains. French President Emmanuel Macron is trying very hard to understand what the Gilets Jaunes, Yellow Vest protesters, are trying to tell him. Try as he may, and he has every reason to keep trying, Macron's remarks whilst going out amongst the people show he hasn't understood the main point. In a valiant attempt to launch the great national debate aimed at clarifying the issues and preparing for the future, Macron had this to say. I'm not even going to try and say this in French because my French is not that great. However, the Washington Post didn't dare to translate this directly, but summed it up in the following way. Macron said he wants to help people in a difficult situation find their way out of poverty by making them more responsible, because some are doing the right thing and some are messing around. The Post also mentioned that Macron used a vulgar verb in French without printing it, déconner. Contextual note, as explained below, there is something in historical and etymological terms profoundly vulgar about the verb déconner, even if it often simply means to do something one ought not to. Macron's use of it poses a twofold problem. Déconner isn't an acceptable item in the public presidential lexicon. The sound itself shocks because of its associations, but more seriously, using it as Macron has done to describe other people's habitual behaviour clearly reveals an attitude of patronising scorn. And here's a historical note which will give you a bit better idea what déconner means. Déconner is a verb built from the noun con, which is the origin of the English word cunt, that can be used in French as a vulgar noun referring to female genitalia, or as an adjective expressing moral condemnation and contempt. So there you go. Here we have the elitist Macron slapping the people in the face again. And so here, this is from the University of Melbourne, Echoes of Revolution. The Yellow Vest protesters in France are writing out books of grievances just like their forebears from the 1789 revolution in what is a critical challenge for President Macron. Emmanuel Macron hit the French political scene like a meteor. He launched his political party, La République en Marche, the Republic on the Move, in April 2016. Little over 1 year later, in May 2017, by a percentage margin of about 65 to 35 over Marine Le Pen. Elected president at the age of 39, he is France's youngest leader since Napoleon Bonaparte became emperor, aged 35 in 1804. Some 18 months later, history looks to be echoing again for Macron, but this time it is the tumult of the 1789 revolution. And rather than tricolour cockades, the thousands of protesters are donning that symbol of ordinary people, the yellow safety vest, gilets jaunes, that motorists must carry in case of accidents. Most eerily, the protesters are compiling Cahiers de Doléances, a book of grievances, just as the citizens of 1789 did. What has gone wrong so quickly for the French president? Well, let's just take a little look here. In June 2017, parliamentary elections that followed his presidential win, Macron's LREM candidates won 317 of the 577 constituencies, a startling victory for a party little more than a year old. Support for the dominant centre-right and centre-left parties imploded. Astonishingly, 2/3 of all MPs were new to the National Assembly, and these are people whose election was very largely dependent on Macron's popularity. His voters were disproportionately highly educated, employed residents of major cities, not the disaffected and unemployed of the suburbs and country towns. His own candidates, too, were disproportionately CEOs, lawyers and doctors, university professors and managers. Macron insisted during his presidential campaign that he is neither right nor left, but rather a centrist liberal. He meant this in the sense of being progressive on social issues like the environment, but an economical liberal on issues like labour, market reform and free trade. He has argued that old divisions of left and right have been replaced by those between progressives and conservatives. This is the front part of a Cahiers de Doléances or Book of Grievances. Macron has faced challenges that have proved too great for any of his predecessors going back 40 years and which are similar to those confronting most of Europe. What can be done about the long-term double-digit unemployment of about 10%, which rises to 25% among young people, and how can very high public expenditure, 50% of GDP in 2015, compared with 36% in Australia, can be sustained when general government debt is already very high, in 2017 some 124% of GDP compared with 66% in Australia. His major reforms have been to loosen France's highly protective labour laws and to change pensions and unemployment benefits in the hope of both reducing the massive state deficit and inducing employers to hire more employees. But how can such reforms be secured without undermining France's highly valued social protections? Simmering discontent among the mass of wage earners, retirees and welfare recipients was focused on a series of minor but deeply felt cuts to purchasing power, while the well-to-do benefited from tax cuts. And we all know what happened next. The carbon tax came in and the people went wild. And here we have King Louis the 16th of France at age 20. His fate was to be guillotined during the French Revolution. France's 36,000 communes has similarly opened up new books of grievances, taking up an idea popularised by the socialist Bruno Latour. What the books reveal are a maze of resentments, many of them contradictory: demands for lower taxes but higher social welfare benefits, cheaper diesel but more action on climate change, lower prices but higher wages, more university places but no fees. Underpinning them all, however, is a deep resentment of them, the well-to-do of France's political class and its allies in the business sector and the Parisian bureaucracy, who are seen as the beneficiaries of the global economy. Macron is decried as the president of the rich, a new Louis XVI, too arrogant to listen. Now, what I find absolutely fascinating about these protests is the fact that it is mirroring the French Revolution, and this is absolutely a populist uprising from the grassroots level. Right and left are coming together to fight a common foe, which is this elitist group of bankers that have taken over the countries of Europe and basically cut the little guy out of the loop. They made it very, very difficult for people to survive in France, and I'm sure this is the same in many other places across Europe. But with the gentrification of the cities, housing has become far too expensive for people to live there, but the cities is where all of the work is, and so these people now have to commute from rural or urban districts where housing is more affordable. But then when you slap a carbon tax on the gasoline, it automatically hinders those people who are commuting backwards and forwards. So this, because it is touching people so deeply, and of course one of my little sayings over the years has been, nothing takes away your sense of humour like a money problem. For Macron to come out and insult the protesters when he knows full well that those people are not rebels, they are not terrorists, these are his own fellow countrymen, and so to be calling them names to their face really is an absolute insult. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my video and the information herein. If you have, please like and subscribe below. Please click that big red button, it really does help when you do. We are zooming our way to 10,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing, which means that more and more and more people are accessing this, I think, important information as we deal with this pivotal stage in history, as pivotal as the French Revolution was. The French Revolution was a transforming incident in France, and that of course is how France became a republic, and it was arguably one of the most democratic countries in our time. Anyway, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off. Please, you have yourself a great day. Wrap up nice and warm if you're in Canada. It is going to be a bitterly cold weekend, and in the meantime you take care, and we will talk to you very, very soon. See you now. Bye.